Hey everybody, we're back with more daily dose of Genshin, daily dose of Josh. We'll figure out the title. Today's conversation revolves around Dendro. More specifically, I did want to talk about polymorphic reactions. And polymorphic reactions, and I don't want to misinterpret this, but we've seen evidence of polymorphic reactions before. If you guys don't know, melting freeze is actually a pseudo polymorphic reaction, as when you apply, oh goodness, when you apply water and ice, you get your freeze. And then when you melt off of that, you actually get a 2.5 multiplier versus a 2 multiplier, which is almost similar to what the polymorphic reactions of Dendro are going to be doing. Not necessarily similar in that they provide percentage bonuses, but they provide some just extra base damage, I believe. Not terribly sure. Again, that information has yet to be officially released, so we'll talk less about the numbers now. However, what we do have to talk about is Dendro being able to react with only 3 elements, which are Pyro, Hydro, and Electro, which, all things considered, are now going to be the 3 main elements going forward into Sumeru 3.0. So where does that leave the other elements? Cryo, Anemo, and Geo. Geo, of course, is very... It's beating to the hearts, or sorry, excuse me, it's beating to the sound of its own drum, or whatever, beating to the rhythm of its own drum. Geo is fine on its own. Geo does what Geo does. Unfortunately, you can't crystallize off of Dendro, at least I don't believe. So you're just going to have to crystallize and or utilize the other Geo characters just basically how you have pretty much since 1.3, I believe, whenever that buff came to Geo. With Anemo, at first, my original take was that, oh, Anemo is going to be unaffected. If anything, you should want to have 1 Dendro support, 1 Anemo support, and then 2 of your main and sub DPS characters. But that has slowly changed. Excuse me, again, that notion has slowly changed because I've come to the realization that in order for you to proc Vivi, you need to swirl. And one of the best things that Anemo characters provide is said swirl reaction. Now, it's not to say that you can't still run, again, that Dendro, Anemo, and let's say, you know, Pyro, Hydro, Vaporize, or whatever you want to do. You can still run it. You can still get the Vivi shred off. You can still introduce Burgeon, I believe it is, with Dendro and Pyro. And then you can still interact Dendro to Hydro and then Hydro to Pyro as Hydro is able to interact with 2 elements at the same time. However, you can't just swirl Hydro and then also do those other 2. You need to make sure that you have your rotation in order, as long as if you want to make sure that the specific characters enact certain reactions. So where does that leave us with Anemo? Anemo and Dendro are seeming to be 2 similar options, yet they will be somewhat exclusive options. Of course, we don't have much of a sample size as only Tighnari and Kole will be out. However, with the introduction of other Dendro characters and even Dendro characters into the future past 3.0, I believe that we could see the splitting of Anemo and Dendro as two of the main elements from which you actually can branch out of. At the end of 2.0 chapter, basically the 2.8 patch, Anemo is the best element in the game. If anybody says Anemo isn't the best element in the game, well, sorry to say, Anemo, it's literally just the best. It's able to react with everything, able to buff the abilities and the performance of every other element, except Geo. Of course, Geo being on its own. Dendro is only able to interact with 3. Again, we already talked about Geo, Anemo being on its own branch. Now, let's come back to Cryo. As of 2.8, Cryo has fallen off just ever so slightly. Not to say that it isn't good, as Cryo is probably the 4th best element, as it goes, Anemo, Hydro. You can make an argument for Cryo than Pyro, but, you know, Pyro and Cryo have somewhat similar use cases and team comp setups, etc., etc. So with Cryo not being able to interact with Dendro, at least right off the bat, I would very much love and enjoy a Cryo Dendro, somewhat like of an extra slow, or like, you know, reduction of ability cooldown or something of that nature. I'm not terribly sure how that would work. Again, this is all hypothetical. The fact that Cryo is losing out on this ability to create polymorphic reactions might leave Cryo in dust moving past 3.0 into 4.0, 5.0. We can't necessarily tell right now, as again, the game gets more difficult, things get power crept. It seems as though Dendro, even though it's not necessarily the most overpowered element slash basis of elemental reactions, it does provide us with slightly higher performance as compared to reactions such as superconduct. Ooh, that's pretty good. So Cryo being left out, there's a lot of FOMO. And not to say that's the end of the world for Cryo, by no means. A lot of the Cryo characters are going to maintain their positions for the most part. In particular, the DPSs, Ayaka, Ganyu, the supports like Diona and Shunha. They're most likely than not going to keep their place wherever they may be on your particular tier list. Their effectiveness doesn't go away just because they aren't able to interact. They're not diminished, let's just say. They just aren't included in the party. But now let's actually talk about the other reactions. We have Pyro with Bergen. which is looking to be just a slightly modified extra form of burn, which would be interesting if you're able to burn and burgeon, unless burn just turns to burgeon, then by which, hey, that's okay too. We have quicken with electro and bloom as the initial reactions for electro and hydro, respectively, all to Dendro. And those particular abilities, albeit on paper, aren't necessarily the strongest looking or the most aesthetic. I think moving forward, in particular with the characters, and I think this is an instance where the characters will define the element, versus the other way around, where the element will define the characters. That case is very much apparent with the Hydro element, where Hydro is able to incite some of the greatest reactions in the game. Dendro might be defined by its characters, not by the element itself. Again, we do have to see what the Dendro element brings. If you guys enjoyed today's talk, make sure you guys subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Comment down below what you guys would like to see next. Again, if you guys have a name for this series, please put it down in the comments below. I am somewhat terrible with coming up with names of things. You guys know I run a Genshin trivia show called The Spiral Abyss. And yeah, I just ripped it off of The Spiral Abyss. I'm very creative, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's talk. We'll see you guys for the next daily dose of Josh/Genshin. Peace out.